Hi everyone, this is a last minute video looking at the paper 2 exam. This video will be looking at the reading exam. I'll also do one for the writing exam, which will be in the description. The link will be there. So the idea is going to go really quickly through the exam, giving you some real pointers to help you do well. So this exam will be 2 hours, 1 hour for the reading and 1 hour for the writing. So look at the reading exam. So remember, you have 6 questions in the exam. Questions 1 and questions 3 will be finding information. Okay, so for the different extracts, remember there's 2 extracts in this exam. Question 2 will be how does the writer do something. Question 4 is how well do you think the writer does something. And 5 and 6 we are comparing the 2 texts. In question 6 we're comparing the 2 texts in detail, and in question 5 we're just looking at both extracts and answering a simple question on them. So details for this exam are, it's section A of the paper. It's worth 30% of your whole English language qualification. So adding another 30% is 60% for this exam. 1 hour should be spent on the reading. You're given 2 extracts. You've got 6 questions to answer. You've got 10 minutes on reading and understanding the extract, and then you've got 15 minutes on answering the questions. Really important. You must time manage for this exam. I would say for the 3 or 4 mark questions you're looking at 3 or 4 minutes, and for the 10 mark questions you're looking at 13 to 15 minutes. It's so important that you time manage, and the most important thing about this video is you've got to finish the exam, you've got to get through it. So if you're doing a 10 mark question, after 13 or 15 minutes, it doesn't matter if you've done 2 PEs or 5 PEs, you've got to move on to the next question. If you are doing a 10 mark question, we're looking for 5 or 6 point evidence explained paragraphs. On some of the questions, in particular the 10 mark questions, you need to use subject terminology, so things like adjectives, verbs, etc. But terminology is not needed on every point. So if you're doing 5 PEs, maybe do terminology in 2 or 3 of them. So we can use lots of terminology, similes, personification, repetition. However, my advice would be you can go a long way with these 4, in particularly verb, adverb and adjective. So if you're not sure of what these terms mean, I would revise verb, adverb and adjectives till the exam. Question 1 will be a really simple question. You'll be asked 3 random questions. It's normally split A, B, C, and you've just got to make sure that you don't need to do point evidence explain. You just need to do a 1-sentence answer saying your point. Okay, so for example, you'll get a text like this, you'll find a question, you just got to find it in the text, and once you found it, just write it really simply. He'd walked onto a dangerous crack. Okay, each of them a little sentence, doesn't have to be a big sentence, but for example, how did he cope with the long days on the expedition? C, don't just put iPod, put he listened to his iPod. Really important, there's no point wasting time on a 1 mark question, okay? So if you can't find one of the answers, just leave it, you can always go back to it. Question 2, how does the writer do something? So this is looking at the language techniques and what influence the writer has. This question is how does the writer make this trip seem dangerous and difficult, okay? Track through the text. If we're looking for 6 PEs, 6 quotes, pick 2 from the start, 2 from the middle to the end, so it makes sure the examiner knows you've read the whole thing. Okay, you zoom in on keywords and think to yourself, why has the writer used them? So again, we're looking for 5 paragraphs, okay, 5 PEs. So for example, he awoke to a raging, howling blizzard. So we could zoom in on the words raging and howling and say, why has the writer used them? Well, the use of the adjectives raging and howling makes the storm seem angry, alive and punishing. If they would have just put the storm, it just tells us it was the weather, but raging and howling tells us what the writer wants us to know. Okay, so try and use a structure like this to help you. So I would revise the structure you're going to use in the exam. And if I show you a couple of examples for this question, based on the quote, I stepped onto a giant crack. In the text, the writer makes the trip seem hard, that's the question, by using the phrase giant crack. Then I've zoomed in on the adjective giant and say this creates the image of an intimidating and enormous and maybe fatal crack. Another one, this time the quote is 481 miles of ice in 18 days. My PE is, in the text, the writer makes the trip seem hard by using the phrase blah blah blah, where this statistic, because that's the language technique, suggests the men are attempting something nearly impossible. So I'm saying to myself, why has that quote been used? Why does that quote make the trip seem difficult? Question 3. Question 3 is the same as question 1. The only difference is on the 19th century extract, so it's on the older extract, but you're doing exactly the same again, finding information. Okay, question 4. So this is your opinion. This is the evaluation question. So, like I say, I'll ask you to give your opinion. There's 10 marks available, 13 to 15 minutes. Try and start a sentence with I think, I feel. Use frequent short quotations. Consider the impact on the reader. You're also using terminology like verbs and adjectives. Okay, so this question was, how well do you think Scott captures his feelings? So you would say, I think he does it well, and say how. So here's a structure you can have a look at, so pause if you need to pause. So examples, Scott successfully shows his frustration and happiness with his thin breakfast. The adjective thin shows Scott and the rest of the group are starving, weak and fragile. So I've said that Scott has been successful showing something, that's my point. My quote is my evidence and my explanation, I've explained it. Okay, another one is a different extract. What do you think he'd feel about Joe's views about getting out the crack in the ice? I think Joe feels mentally exhausted, so that's what I think, because the writer says he felt paralysed. The adjective paralysed makes me think Joe physically and mentally is frozen on the spot of knowing not what is beneath him. Question 5 is the first question where we are looking at both texts. Okay, so we're looking at extracts 1 and 2. It's a 4-mark question, so we're looking at 5 minutes. In a way, it's very similar to 1 and 3, so we're just finding information, we're not doing too lengthy an explanation. Key information requires info from both texts, 4 marks, 4 or 5 minutes. You don't have to compare in this question, this is a common mistake. Question 6 we are comparing, and this one we're just gathering information. Okay, so you're only looking at a few sentences for each, and this is the structure I would use in the text by Ben Fogel, in the text by Scott. So use the surnames of the writers and make it clear which one you're talking about. And then here is an example. So this question was saying what they both took with them on the expedition, what food, and I put Fogel had lots of food, I've listed it, he enjoyed the food, and then I said however, so again I'm maybe comparing a little bit, Scott had rationed meat and a thin breakfast, he said food raised spirits. So all I've really done is look for the focused question, which is food, that is the focus of the question, and I just find the information that tells me about food in both extracts. 4 marks, so you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 quotes. Question 6, so this is the compare questions. We're looking at 5 comparisons worth 10 marks, maybe use a bit of terminology. Key information, we're comparing the similarities and differences. We're using some subject terminology, effects on the reader. Try to use words like however, in contrast, likewise. 10 marks available, 13 to 15 minutes. Okay, looking at about 5 points and then backing up with quotes from both extracts. Here's the structure I would use. So you make a point, both writers feel the same or different about something. Then say what text 1 says, explain it, then says what text 2 says, explain it. Here's an example in more detail. Both writers feel the same about the weather. Then I put, Scott uses the phrase raging, howling weather. The adjectives create the idea the weather is angry. Likewise, Fogel had problems with the weather. So I've used that word likewise to say that they have something in common. He uses the phrase -50, where the statistic creates the image of a hellishly cold experience. Okay? So I would do that 4 or 5 times in my 15 minutes. Final tips for the reading: time manage. So 3 or 4 minute question, 3 or 4 mark question, 4 minutes. If it's a 10 mark question, 13 to 15. Use terminology like verbs, adjectives, adverbs, similes, statistics on questions 2, 4 and 6, basically the 10 mark questions. Leave a 1-line gap between all the PEs so it's clear for the examiner. And when it's a verb or a noun, make sure you know what it says. If you don't know if it's a verb or a noun or an adjective or a simile, try not to use it. If you're confident, use it, but it's better not to use it than to get it wrong. Okay, so try and use it, revise before the exam.